When the church is at its best, it is a community that shares life together as it chases after Jesus. We're in Philippians, and last week we worked on Philippians chapter 3, where Paul talks about how the driving force within his soul is that he wants to know Christ, and that he has given up a lot of things which used to seem like they were of benefit to him, but next to Christ, those things have become like garbage, like nothing compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ Jesus. Paul says that he wants to know Christ and he wants to learn to share in the sufferings of Jesus so that he can also share in the resurrection of Jesus. He is throwing himself into the story of Jesus, following Jesus. And I want to pick up the thread there because in verse 12, Paul goes on and he says some things that are very important to the nature of what it means to follow Jesus, to be a disciple of Jesus. He kind of backs up a step in verse 12. He says, not that I've already obtained all that. Lest anybody think that Paul is this super spiritual person that's got everything all together. He says, look, not that I've already obtained all this or have already reached the goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus has taken hold of me. Or I press on to make it my own because Jesus has made me his own, another translation says. Paul goes on and says, so I haven't reached the goal yet, but one thing I can do, I can forget what is behind and I can press on to what is coming. I can press on to what still awaits in Jesus. He's willing to say the things that are behind me, some of those things were good and some of those things were bad, but I'm leaving those things in the past and I'm pressing on towards Jesus. Now, here's the thing. Now, church, I really try not to go super nerd on you guys all the time. I really don't like doing that. I don't want to be the guy that's always like, well, this Hebrew word or this Greek word is the thing that gives you the incredible insight. But I have to tell you that this week I cannot resist. And I've shared this with some of you before, but I cannot resist because there is a turn of phrase here that is just irresistible in the way it sheds light to Paul's story. The word that's translated when press on, when Paul says, I press on, and he says this a couple times in this section, is a Greek word that means something like pursue or chase, okay? And it's of particular significance because as Paul recounts his conversion on the Damascus Road, in the Damascus Road when he was blinded and had this place where he met Jesus and Jesus talks to him, the thing that the voice of Jesus says to him is, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me, right? It's the very same word. Where there it's translated persecute. In our text in Philippians 3, it's translated press on. But if we take the word pursue or we take the word chase in both instances, it sounds something like this. Paul, or Saul, why are you chasing me? And here when we get to Philippians 3, we have Paul saying, one thing I can do, I can forget what is behind and I can chase after Jesus. But what a difference, right? What a difference for Paul at the beginning of his career to be confronted by Jesus who says, why are you chasing me? Meaning, why are you persecuting me? Why are you pursuing me in such a way that you are trying to end my followers? Because that's in the moment when Paul is like persecuting the church and he's going and he's on a mission to take people who have become followers of Jesus and to put them into prison. And in that context, Jesus is saying, why are you chasing after me with hostility, right? But at this point of his life, after so much has happened, Paul has come to the place where he is still madly pursuing Jesus. But now he is chasing Jesus not out of bitterness, not with hostility, but with rejoicing and with love and respect and reverence for who Jesus is. Now he chases Jesus as a disciple, as someone who wishes to learn from Jesus' hand, who was indeed trying to share in his sufferings so that he could also share in his resurrection. See, Paul had met the resurrected Jesus, and he wants to join in that part of Jesus' life. And so he understands that the very suffering that Paul himself was imposing on other people, he had to be willing to undergo that himself, to take on the way of Jesus so that he could become more like him. This is at the very heart of what it means to be a disciple. To chase after Jesus. To chase after Jesus in such a way that we want to learn from him, that we desperately want to see him. Like the crowds in the first century that would go from place to place trying to find out where Jesus was and responding to rumors. The Messiah is here. The Messiah is here. They would go to those places and try to learn what he had said. And some of them would become his disciples and would follow him from place to place after that. So too, we are people who listen for rumors of the Messiah, who look into the world to find those places where Jesus is present and active, where Jesus is at work fulfilling his mission. And we do our best to go to those places too, to show up in those places and to stand beside Jesus in doing his work. So whether that means showing kindness to the poor in their suffering, or whether it means standing with people who are oppressed, or whether it means being a voice for morality in a world that often turns its back on any kind of notion of what is right or wrong. Whatever it means, we listen for the voice of Jesus, we watch for Jesus, we listen for rumors of where he might be, and we jump into those places, and we pay attention. And we try to find out what it means for us to join Jesus in his work in that place. Just like Paul, after he finally understood the truth that Jesus is Lord, he dedicated his life to chasing after Jesus and finding out exactly what it meant to join him in his work, to share in his sufferings, leaning towards beginning to understand what it would mean to participate in the resurrection. Whether you're a disciple for a long time or whether you're just getting started, this is what we want to invite you into the journey of chasing Jesus. Earlier this year, we spent some time trying to pray and think about who we are as a church, what's right there at the heart of our identity. And one of the things was that we are disciples of Jesus, right? That's what we're trying to do. We want to always be learning from him. Another one was that everybody has another step to take in the way that they follow Jesus. So whether it's somebody that's been there for a long time or they're just now getting started, there's always kind of a next step. There's always a path towards growth of discipleship. There's always somewhere that you can pursue and follow and chase after Jesus. In fact, even if you're not yet a disciple. And I want to talk to you for just a second and say this. If you're not yet a disciple of Jesus, we want you to join us in the chase. We want you to come. Begin with curiosity. And then as you listen and learn, we want you to take on the same commitments, to follow Jesus and to pledge yourself to joining in Jesus' story. We do that by what we call baptism, which is a way that we show ourselves to be joining in Jesus' suffering in the story of his death and also being joined in his resurrection in the story of him being raised. And when we do that, we're saying we are committed to joining the chase after Jesus. Because, my friend, I can assure you of this. Jesus is absolutely chasing you. May God bring you together. Amen.